Good evening. We have two meetings tonight. We'll start with the special meeting of the Urbana City Council. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Ammons?
Here.
Brown?
Here.
Hazen?
Here.
Jacobson?
Here.
Miller?
Here.
Roberts? Wu?
Here.
Mayor Marlin.
Here. Is there anyone who wishes to address the City Council tonight? I have two cards for the Committee of the Whole. Okay. We'll move on to... I think there's somebody
I think
else.
Mr. Cruz is.
You'd prefer to do it now? Yeah. Okay. Gerald Cruz.
Okay.
Good evening. I think it's on there? Okay. Good evening, everyone. It's nice to be back from an extended absence. Last Wednesday, I emailed each of you additional information and feedback regarding traffic and pedestrian stop data. I only intend to highlight a few points tonight, but first I want to thank those of you who took the time to read the information and respond. The Council has repeatedly encouraged and expressed its appreciation when the public participates in addressing city concerns and issues. Therefore, I look forward to hearing from more of you. Tonight, I want to briefly speak to the policy and/or policing changes implemented on January 1st to reduce traffic stop disparities. Public understanding and awareness of these changes are both critical to improving police-community relations and confidence in the Urbana Police Department. The brief and vague statements provided today fall far short. Certainly more specificity can be given without compromising officer safety or policing effectiveness. You cannot claim to be transparent when your actions are not. Therefore, I request the mayor or chief to make a brief statement at the next council meeting or release a short written statement sharing a more appropriate level of detail regarding these changes. Recently, you adopted traffic stop racial disparities as one of the city's priorities. You are to be commended for this action. In this context, your hesitation to address and discuss pedestrian stop racial disparities is perplexing. The state legislature has clearly identified the need to collect and report this data. IDOT now reports this data annually because of potential similarities in policing strategies used during traffic stops and pedestrian stops. The city needs to do likewise. Why should this be of interest to everyone and a priority for the city? In 2017, African American pedestrians were stopped by the Urbana Police Department at a rate of 428% higher and 660% higher than Caucasian pedestrians for reportable and non-reportable stops, respectively. Simply put, the pedestrian stop rate is more than 3 times higher than the traffic stop disparity, and the city is failing to address it. That is shocking and demands a response from the city. And if you look at the chart in front of me, the red bar on the bottom is the census population used by IDOT to represent the African American population of Urbana, which is 14.83%. And then the two tall bars are the reportable and non-reportable stops conducted by the Urbana Police Department last year, which are roughly 63% and 83% of all pedestrian stops. Much more data is needed to understand the impact this disparity is having within the African American community, our community police relations on reducing crime, and whether overall community safety is enhanced or not. Improved and more data for both pedestrian stop categories should minimally include stop numbers by race, age, and gender groupings, map overlays of where the stops are occurring, reason for initiating pedestrian stop, and the outcome of the stop. Of course, for reportable stops, that information is available in the IDOT report each year. For non-reportable, it's not. If the council, mayor, and UPD are serious about addressing racial disparities in all its forms, then pedestrian stops should be placed as a discussion item on the agenda of the next city council meeting. The council should publicly discuss whether to co-join the study, data collection, reporting, and response to traffic and pedestrian stops into one seamless process. Whether to direct Ms. Hayes to include both the 2017 IDOT traffic and pedestrian.
Mr. Cruz, your time is up.
Okay. I just finished this.
I would motion for him to finish the last of his
Is there a
presentation.
second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, continue.
Thank you very much. The second one, whether to direct Ms. Haynes to include both the 2017 IDOT traffic and pedestrian stop data in the UPD's local data presentation scheduled for this summer, June and July. Third, whether to direct the UPD to begin collecting and reporting more detailed local pedestrian stop data as noted earlier. 4, whether to seek UPD guidance and input as to how they might approach reducing this disparity. And finally, whether to make the same strong public commitment and priority to understanding and reducing pedestrian racial disparities as you have given for traffic stop disparities. Racial disparities have been normalized and accepted for far too long in our history, our culture, and our local community. Now that you know, the City Council, Mayor, and UPD have a responsibility to act.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bill?
Yeah, I can't remember what, to what extent do they currently list the reason for stop, for pedestrian stops? Do they have like a motivation as far as like matches description, something like that?
The reportable stops, they're stopped when there's a frisk, a search, a summons, or an arrest made. And for every stop that the UBD conducts, they fill out a card for reportable and non-reportable, but only the reportable ones that are identified for those reasons are reported to IDOT. And there's a very extensive breakout in terms of the reasons and outcomes for those. But if you look at the stops for each category, this past year were 414 and 415. They're almost equivalent. And so we have very little information regarding the non-reportable. which would be very helpful to know in terms of locations and what categories or types of people to understand the dynamic that's going on in relationship to affecting crime reduction or community safety or not.
Okay, yeah, I've seen a poster on some of this, and I do remember that there was a pretty high percentage that the reason for stop was matches description of someone that had been, reported in the area. So and we've talked about this a little bit last time you were here. The motivation for pedestrian stops is much different than traffic stops. I mean, I think there's very few actual pedestrian violations of traffic laws where you would expect an equal number. So yeah, I think we should look more into it, but I wouldn't jump to the conclusion that pedestrian stops and traffic stops should be the same.
I'm not suggesting that. I'm suggesting we collect more data, study it, and understand it, find out what's going on. I don't think we should accept it either without knowing.
Aaron?
So, Daryl, I think that it's, first of all, welcome back and thank you for your continued vigilance on this topic. I know it's not comfortable for folks, but it needs to be spoken to. And I think that the event we did at the Civic Center, where the young Robert, came to share his story, it was a pedestrian stop for the young man, and it was a very powerful story that he shared about being stopped on his way to the library, a young African-American child. We've heard Mr. Miller come in and talk about walking and being approached by UPD. And we've seen the tragic situation that took place in New York with Mr. Garner. So when we see the impact, there is a tremendous impact on pedestrian stops as well, or on the community via pedestrian stops as well. And I do think that it's a fair point to make that since we're making this a priority from a driving standpoint, that it's the same thing, right? We're worried about any sort of disparities or any sort of stress on the relationship between the community and the police department. So I look forward to us looking at this more in depth as well, and I appreciate you sharing it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I'll go ahead and read the other public input card. This is from Bishop King James and Reverend Dr. Evelyn B. Underwood. They don't wish to address members of the council, but they ask that their position be entered into the record as following. We are continually concerned about the Dr. Ellis subdivision sewer problem. Okay, we have report from the Committee of the Whole from March 12th, and that was chaired by Dean Hazen.
Okay, on behalf of the Committee of the Whole, I have ordinance number 2018-03-020, an ordinance vacating an alley, north alley of Water Street between Lynn Street and Cottage Grove Avenue, Public Works.
I'll second.
Moved by Dean, seconded by Mary Alice. Any discussion? Bill?
I just wanted to thank staff for including the text of the ordinance that allows the city to divide up or give away alley portions to residential properties without reimbursement.
And I would note that this type of motion requires a 3/4 vote of the alderpersons holding office, and that equates to 6 council members. So will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Almond?
Yes.
Brown?
Yes.
Hazen?
Yes.
Jacobson?
Yes.
Miller?
Yes.
Wu?
Yes.
That motion passes. Dean?
Okay, on behalf of the Committee of the Whole, I have ordinance number 2018-03021, an ordinance vacating a certain portion of right-of-way, Church Street, west of Lincoln Avenue, Public Works.
Brad Bennett has a few items to share.
Thank you. I want to share a couple things with you this evening on that. The first is we did add a section 3 to the ordinance that requires that the properties that will be gaining the right-of-way from the vacation will construct a multi-use path. What you should have on your desk in front of you is the latest version of this. We had a conversation today with the developer of the project, and originally we had a completion date for the or the shared use path of April 1st, 2019. The developer asked us if we could extend that till August 30th. Obviously, completing a pathway this time of year is probably problematic. They're not planning on leasing those units till August, so we did make that change, and that's incorporated in there. But we did add that Section 3 that requires them to provide that 8-foot wide shared use path through the vacated right-of-way. And as Alderman Brown mentioned, we did include in the council memo the original ordinance from council about vacating residential properties at no cost to those abutting residential properties. So with that, I'll open it up if there's any questions.
Is there a motion?
I will motion.
I'll second.
Moved by Dean.
Oh, sorry.
Seconded by
It's been a long
Eric.
day. Thought that was your part, Mayor. Sorry about that. Are we going to vote on that then? Would you please call for a vote?
Yes. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Ammon,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Hazen,
Apparently so, yes.
Jacobson,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
and Wu.
Yes.
That motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. And under new business, we have ordinance number 2018-03-025, which is an ordinance amending Urbana City Code 3, Section 3-43 for classes AA, AA1, and G1 liquor licenses for Vidhi 3 LLC, doing business as Wyndham Garden Urbana, 1001 West Killarney Street, Urbana. This is a situation where the Wyndham Garden in Urbana has been sold. The new owner has applied for the same licenses that the previous owner had. The new owner has met with us, has a solid reputation in the industry, and is planning on significant upgrades to the property. So this is very good news for the hotel. And yes, before I go any more.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Pursuant to the Illinois Liquor Control Act of 1934, I will have to recuse myself from voting on this particular ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you, Jared. So what we have is the license. We're in the final process of finishing the application process, but since this is in the same location for the same property, we are going to recommend this liquor license. And when the process is, it'll be for a limited number of days, and when the application process is complete, then they will be issued their final license. Mary Alice?
I just had a question. If we are basically giving them the same license that the previous owners had, why is the second whereas here amending the section to include the number of class liquor licenses with the various codes? If they already have one and that person's giving it up, I assume, or have they not given it up yet?
They have given it up by virtue of sale. However, if you go into the, later on, you'll see that it does not increase the number. It does change who has them, though. The number of licenses outstanding do not increase, but who has them does change.
So the whereas is just reaffirming the exact same
Yes.
number that we have?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Is there a motion for approval? Bill?
I'll move to approve ordinance number 2018-03-025, ordinance amending Urbana City Code Chapter 3, Section 343 for the liquor license for Vidhi 3 LLC.
Second.
Moved by Bill, seconded by Aaron. Any further discussion? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Ammon,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Hazen,
Yes.
Jacobson,
Yes.
Wu.
Yes.
That motion passes. And with no further business before this meeting of the City Council, this meeting is adjourned.